Hey everyone, Connor English here, hopping on today to chat about perennial hay covers. Talk about our two perennial hay mixes that we offer, the heavy land and the light land blends. Light land consists of a little bit more alfalfa percentages compared to the heavy land, as well as not having any red clover in the light land. The higher percentages of alfalfa in this mix just allows for sandier soils that might not have as much moisture, just wanting to put more plant species in the mix on the alfalfa side of things just to ensure good germination and a good stand for many years to come. The heavy land, a little bit more tall fescue, the addition of red clover, and the reduced amounts of alfalfa in this, just as most producers are going to be in a position to have better germination with less seeds on the alfalfa side of things. So we're adding a little bit more grass and clover as well, just to have a more diverse mix in this environment. To chat a little bit about year one establishment, in our farm west of Brandon, Manitoba, we've had really good success with establishing a few different ways. In most years, we're utilizing some tillage prior to seeding. Our old air seeder that we use, we like to just dust it in, followed by a harrow pass. So having some dirt to move on top of the soil to really get the perennial seeds a good seed to soil contact has had success on our farm. This year we utilized the silage land roller after harrowing in the grass because we were going to silage our companion crop off. But in years past we have just finished things up with a harrow bar and had really good success with good seed to soil contact. One thing on year one of establishment, like to keep in mind, if a field is going to be going into perennial forages, have that in the back of your mind a year or two in advance. Really good for helping with the cleanliness of a field. If a crop rotation can be in place a few years in advance, that gives you the opportunity to utilize herbicide passes at a few different times of the year. That can set you up for good cleanliness in that field on the year of establishment, as there is no herbicide options in that year. Seeding time, we've had really good success with seeding in the month of May around home. When there's good soil moisture is probably the most important, and good opportunity for rains to come after seeding. We've utilized, like I said, a companion crop of either a full season or cool season cover crop in the past, and we've also utilized a few different monocrop grain cash crops as a companion crop, just cut at a lesser rate. So to talk about a few of the harvest options in year one, if utilizing a companion crop, we try to put ourselves in a good position to take that companion crop off earlier in the year, the better. This just allows the perennials to have a wide open canopy so that they can capture sunlight at really high levels, as well as moisture later into the summer. This past year we used a full season cover crop as seen in this picture as a silage crop. We seeded it middle of May and harvested that crop at the end of July. That put us in a good position to capture sunlight through the months of August and September, as well into October prior to freeze up and snowfall this year. That allowed the perennials to really get some good roots under themselves and get ready for that initial winter. A couple of the other harvest options, we've utilized some cash crops off of a perennial sow down crop as well. In pictures here, we sowed down some oats, or we've done barley in the past, just cutting the rate to about half of what you normally would in a monocrop grain setting. This just gives for more availability for sunlight and moisture for perennial forages to grow in the under canopy. This, in a high moisture year, really can have good success. If the summer gets dry on you, this could put some perennial forages in jeopardy, just as the companion crop is growing above in the canopy and really utilizing sunlight and moisture at much higher rates than those small perennial forages in the year of establishment. So in a year of good moisture, definitely have the opportunity to do this. If things get a little bit drier into the middle of the summer, utilizing the crop earlier on before it hits maturity is probably a good position, as we are trying to establish these perennials and put them in a good position for many years to come. In year two and beyond, haying is quite frequently utilized for both of these heavy land and light land mixes with the high percentages of alfalfa. Quality is something that lots of producers will look at if they're looking to do multiple cuts in that first year of solely perennial production. I've had really good success with waiting a little bit in that first year of solely perennials just to give the plants a good chance to get their roots underneath them, depending on soil and moisture conditions into the late part of the summer. We want to set this crop up for good success for many years to come. So that first year we might lose a little bit on the tonnage side of things, but just putting the plants in a good position to establish themselves correctly. Taking the plants at a little high maturity level will increase our quantity. Our quality will be decreased a little bit, but that could be turned in years following, taking the crop at a higher quality multiple times through the year. A little bit to touch on grazing or second cuttings of the perennial forages. We've had good success taking an initial hay cut in the month of July around home, and in the years past we've grazed our second cut with the cows later into the fall. Always watching in these blends with the higher percentages of species like alfalfa. We're wanting them to hit maturity, put a flower on before we turn cows out there. This just lessens the need for a management side of things a little bit more. When alfalfas hit maturity and are flowering, they are in a much better position and cattle don't have the risk of bloating as much. Definitely lots of observation and monitoring the cows when they're grazing this, but definitely a good opportunity to integrate the livestock onto these hay fields in the second or third passes, depending on your farm contact. Now we're going to dive into a few of the species, or all of the species for that matter, in the mixes. Tall fescue, a little bit lower on a percentage in the light land than the heavy land. The great thing about tall fescue, I've had really good success with the stockpiling ability. High tonnage potential in that initial hay cutting, and depending on soil conditions and precipitation, have the chance of a really good amount later in the year, either for second cut hay or grazing opportunities. Meadow brome, widely used across Western Canada in lots of perennial pasture and hay stands. Exact same percentages in both the light land and the heavy land of 10% of the mix. It's got fast growing rates in the springtime, which allows to have lots of quantity in that initial hay cutting late in the spring, early in the summer. It's got better frost resistance than the smooth brome that's also widely used in lots of hay stands. Just an overall good product, and will have really good growing rates early and late into the year. Timothy, widely used in most alfalfa stands across Western Canada, has really good potential for good wide leaf growth late into the summer months that will add some good quality and tonnage to your hay stands. Orchard grass, probably my favorite grass that we've utilized on our farm in both a haying and a grazing environment. Very vigorous when it comes to regrowing after initial cutting or grazing. It's got a very dense root system, and it does very well in Western Canadian cool environments with decent precipitation levels. Bird's foot trefoil, it's a non-bloating legume. It's got a very high adaptability to its environment, and it stays vegetative longer than some things like alfalfa. When it hits maturity, it doesn't all hit maturity at once. It has a bit of an indeterminate maturity levels, which will then give the ability to keep quality in the stand over many more weeks than some of the other legumes in the mix. Red clover, it is only solely found in our heavy land mix, not the light land. Very cool characteristic of clover, as it's got a specific enzyme in this plant that allows the breakdown in the abomasum and not the rumen, which allows for the protein to be utilized more efficiently. More efficient utilization of protein in the abomasum than the rumen, which adds a pretty cool feature to the mix with this red clover in the heavy land cover. The red clover adds a good characteristic to the mix as it really grows well in shaded environments, kind of in the undercarriage of a hay stand. So it captures sunlight at a different level and really adds a lot of value to keeping the soil cool throughout the summer months. We've got 3 alfalfas in both the heavy land and the light land covers. Multi-leaf alfalfa being our first one. It's a tap-rooted alfalfa, very high feed relative feed value with increased leaf growth. It's got many more leaves on a plant than the trifoliate or the creeping root alfalfa. High potential for very high quality feed out of this tap-rooted alfalfa. Trifoliate alfalfa, it's the same as a multi-leaf in the root structure. It is a taproot. It has less leaves than the multi-leaf will have, but much broader leaves on the plant. Once again, very high feed value. Creeping root alfalfa, a little bit different than the multi-leaf and the trifoliate, just in the fact that it has a different root structure. It provides very good ground cover in the canopy, definitely utilizing moisture at different rates than a taproot will. It has had good success in higher water tables than some of the taprooting species. To learn more about the heavy and lightland blends, please feel free to check out the website under the Heavyland Blends to learn a little bit more about each of them and how they differ a little bit between the two. And please feel free to reach out to any territory managers or anyone on the team if you have more questions related to establishing the lightland or heavyland blends.